All right, we're going to review briefly yesterday, and if I go too fast, that's why I'm sharing everything with you. So, we learned yesterday an herbivore eats only plants. Going to kind of breeze through these to read at your convenience. Herbivores typically do have your flat teeth. That's how I always remember them, like a horse. Those are some examples. Another consumer is a carnivore. They eat only meat. I'm going to kind of breeze through these. They typically have sharp, pointed teeth. There are some popular examples. And another type of consumer is an omnivore. That's when they eat both plants and animals. Again, I'm not going to ask you to know every single animal and if they're an herbivore or carnivore. So yesterday we left off with food chains. If I go back to that slide, we're really going to focus the next 2 to 3 weeks on food chains and food webs. So you're going to see a lot of PowerPoints, video clips, games that you can practice the skill. And I'm here if you guys need anything. So we learned yesterday, we know animals interact by either eating plants or animals, and that's when they form a food chain. That food chain's purpose is to demonstrate a relationship between the organisms in that particular environment. It's showing the transfer of energy among all of those organisms. They always begin with a producer. Producers, remember, they begin with a P. They have to go through photosynthesis. Those are your plants. So all food chains begin as a producer, such as grass, fruit, vegetable, flowers, because they are able to make their own food. And those plants can do that through this process called photosynthesis. And to sum photosynthesis up, it's basically using energy from the sun. And that sun gives energy to all living organisms. So plants get their energy through photosynthesis. I'm going to leave this up there to kind of review the concept of photosynthesis. All right. I'm going to skip those slides to discuss and kind of go through some samples so you guys can read that at your convenience. Okay. So here are just some typical food chains that are in our everyday life. If you notice, the sun is giving energy to the producer. The producer in this food chain is the grass, because the grass is able to produce their own food through photosynthesis. Who eats the grass is our first consumer, and that is our grasshopper. Who eats the grasshopper? That is our second consumer. So the frog would be a secondary consumer. It's the second one who consumed. That does not mean that it's the second one in the food chain. The frog is the second consumer. Okay, so the producer's the grass, consumer 1 is the grasshopper, consumer 2 is the frog. At the end of all of our food chains, they'll die and decay. Decomposers are organisms that help break down that body of things that were once living. They need to exist in our environment. Some examples are fungus, bacteria. They can also be animals. We talked about yesterday, scavengers. Some examples are vultures, hyenas, crabs, worms. In this food chain, our mushroom is a decomposer because it eats away at the frog once that frog has died. So that is a review from yesterday. My presentation has a lot of samples that you can go through in other habitats to check out food chains. And we are going to begin next week. Mrs. Krieger's really going to get into food webs. So to get started, I'm just going to show you a sample of one, and I will go more in depth next week.